Good afternoon. The July 1st, 2024 Charlottesville City Council meeting will come to order. My name is Brian Pinkston. I'm the Vice Mayor, and I'm standing in for our Mayor who's out of town this week. Ms. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Councilor Oshrin?
Here.
Councilor Payne?
Here.
Vice Mayor Pinkston?
Here.
Councilor Snook?
Here.
And Mayor Wade is traveling.
Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
I'd move approval of the agenda.
Is there a second? Second, okay. Please cast your vote. The motion passes. This meeting will be divided into 3 sections. The first is a work session to hear and discuss presentations that do not require a council vote. The second is a closed meeting. Then finally, the city council business meeting will start at 6:30 p.m. So the first report we have, I understand, is an update from the United Way.
Hello.
Hi, Ms. Respito. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to see each of you. Thanks for
Good.
having me today. I appreciate it. So there is no formal request, as you stated. This is really just an opportunity for me to share a little update with each of you about what United Way has been doing over the past year, and hopefully it's somewhat conversational, so I hope you'll ask some questions. United Way does many things, and I've met with most of you and have shared that with you, but today we really tried to do more of a deep dive into what are we doing with the city. So what kind of an impact are we using our dollars that we raise either through private philanthropy or through funds from the city or the state to make an impact for our citizens here in the city. So it's a little smaller than I thought it would be. So is there a way to do 1 slide per, or are they gonna be 2? Okay, maybe I'll try to read it down here. There we go, that's better. Okay, that works better. Okay. So the work of the United Way, we unite, collaborate, and convene communities, as well as provide direct services which activate individual and family thriving and equity across the region. And I'll just pause for a sec and ask how many of you are familiar with what we're calling the United Way, the new United Way? Has anybody heard me talk about that before, Lloyd? Would it be helpful for some of the council members for me to explain a little bit about what that means, just for context? Okay. I like to think I've talked to everybody plenty, but I always find people who think we still make grants in the community and we pretty much collect workplace campaigns. So I'll just back up a minute and say I started in the summer of 2018. And when I got to the United Way, that's really what we were known for. We did about 20 grants a year to organizations that work generally within financial stability, school readiness, and community health. But what we were finding is that we couldn't necessarily measure the impact of those resources. So we knew that it made a difference for the nonprofits that we were working with, but we weren't necessarily sure, were we truly meeting the needs of our community and were meeting the priorities of our community. So we took a step back and evaluated where we thought we could make the biggest impact. We talked to our other nonprofit partners, and we wanted to assess how we not duplicate services, but how can we add dollars and add expertise in the space around financial thriving and early school readiness, and what we now call connected community. So there was sort of a year of assessment that went on the United Way while we took the time to kind of look broadly at how we can be a real convener and uniter here in our community. And where we landed was around 2 really specific goals. One is to help lift 1,800 families in our community out of poverty, and the other is to increase by 10% low-income kindergartners who pass developmental benchmarks. So those are 2 specific goals that our United Way is working toward. And we do it in partnership with other nonprofits, the local school systems, to some extent the city and the county, but it's a much more collaborative approach to program delivery, which is very much different than us just giving grants out to other organizations. Another significant shift is that we no longer collect mini workplace campaigns. That was sort of an old model of United Way where local businesses like Wegmans and Sentara Hospital, for example, they still participate, but employees could give dollars essentially through payroll deductions and contribute. The way that things have really moved across our country, not just locally, is we now gather money from either private individuals or foundations in our community, some actually foundations outside our community, corporate gifts. So it's a very different way of raising dollars, and it really is important that people that are investing in the United Way understand our impact and are able to look at the data and what kind of difference we're making. It's not necessarily something where we just expect those dollars to come into workplace campaigns. So that's really the new model, working with other nonprofits to achieve results in the community and then measure that data of the impact. So I don't know, do you have questions around that? Does that seem relatively straightforward?
And during the pandemic, y'all played a really important role of sort of really coordinating a lot of the relief that was coming in, correct?
Yeah, thank you for asking a question. So it's warm in here, I'm gonna take my jacket off. During the pandemic, well, how it all happened, we might recall, it was like Friday, maybe the 13th of March, and everything was shutting down, and Brendan from the Community Foundation had reached out to us and asked if we could help them start to disperse funds in the community because they weren't set up to disperse a lot of funds. And also the Current Pathways phone number that we use through the city wasn't necessarily set up to handle the volume of calls that we were getting from people that needed help. So United Way set up an operator system. We hired new employees. All of our staff took over answering phones, and we work with the Community Foundation. They raised dollars. We raised some dollars. They raised over $6 million. And then we approached the city and the county, and we worked as a four-way partnership to collaboratively disperse what amounted to over about $7 or $8 million just in that first 8 weeks of the pandemic. But that worked so well, and we have the system in place we've kept on, and we now disperse all of the Pathways funding for the city of Charlottesville in a contractual relationship, which has been, I think, really great all the way around. We work with Misty and her team, and it's allowed for a lot more communication. So as families are calling United Way that need help, often we know them in some capacity, and so we can talk to the city and kind of see what they know about the families and our network of nonprofits to make sure that families actually getting what they need, or are they getting duplicative services, or they lost eligibility. So it's a much more sort of open relationship now that we all have, which has been really great. I appreciate you asking that question. Yep. So any questions generally about all of the sort of the shift in the United Way model? If I can, oops. Oh, it's going to be just kind of advanced. I'm sorry. There we go. So Ready Regions Blue Ridge and Mixed Delivery. I'll talk about this program because it's really important to the United Way. About 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we applied for what's called Ready Regions, which is a program run by Virginia Early Childhood Foundation, but it's through the Virginia Department of Education. And so we now serve 21 counties, which is a significant territory. We serve all the way from Winchester, Harrisonburg, Staten Augusta, Waynesboro, and the Planning District. And our goal there is to make sure that we're providing early education support to lower income families, so families earning less than 200% of federal poverty level. So this past year, we placed 514 students, and the average amount of money that it requires for somebody to go to a full day quality child care center is about $20,000 a year. So that represents a little over $8 million. And I don't know if anybody here has young children, or maybe they have grandchildren, but if you've looked at the average cost of care, particularly for infant and toddlers, which can range up to $24,000 a year, it's very unaffordable, especially if you're looking for quality care. Quality care is really essential because you want to make sure your child is getting everything they need in terms of learning so they can succeed when they get to kindergarten. They don't want to just be in a daycare setting. They want to have that quality instruction, which is so important. So this is a program that United Way has been running now 2 years. We've really been involved in working with the VECF for the past 8 or 9 years, and we were awarded this opportunity because of our longstanding relationship and the task force that we've been running since 2015 in early education. Just broadly speaking, if council remembers anything from the presentation today, I hope you can remember how important early education is to workforce development. That if we can't have a thriving ecosystem economically, if we can't have childcare in our community, particularly for those people who don't earn the resources to afford it. And if we want a future workforce that's ready to do well when they get to school, we want to ensure that they have that quality early education. All of the research shows now that's coming out that even 0 to 3 are the most important years of a child's development. So the earlier that we can provide that intervention and care, the better we are. And as a community, my hope is that we really embrace this, both at the city level, the county level, working with the University of Virginia Early Education Implementation Team, which we participate in, and our Chamber of Commerce. They're actually getting ready to move forward with a hire of somebody who's going to focus just on early ed at the local chamber. So, you know, again, when I walk out of the room today, I know you hear a lot of information, but I hope that that resonates, and certainly I can share the slide deck because all of the data is there. The other thing I want to call your attention to is that we do what we call class observations. So that's an in-classroom assessment. Some people might ask, how can you ensure quality? What does that even mean? Class assessment was developed by UVA Curry School of Education, and it basically is a whole system for how a teacher interacts with a child and how you rate those interactions. And we send people out from our team across the region into classrooms that are private centers, the Charlottesville City School System, family day homes, and we're assessing those interactions, gathering that data, and we're able to provide that feedback to those centers. For them to be qualified to get mixed delivery dollars, which makes a significant difference to their business model, they have to make sure that those assessments are at a certain standard so we know that those children are getting that kind of quality instruction. So that sort of broadly speaking has been an impact that's been significant. We'll talk about our Early Learner Scholarship Program in a minute, but historically that was the only program we offered. And that's about 30 placements a year, which is significant, and the dollars make a huge difference. This year we just got granted $214,000 from the city, which is contractual and makes a big difference. But when you're looking at $22,000 a year per child, you can start to see the scale of it, right, and how important it is. So mixed delivery coming in and giving our region over $8 million is really significant and important. I don't know if I'm going to get this to move. Am I doing it the right way?
Just, yeah.
I think he's going to load the larger file.
Yeah, let me
Okay, because, yeah, the way it's now, it's not clicking through.
let me switch over to the other presentation. Give me 1 second.
Oh, that's why. Yeah. Does he have the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay. Should I wait just a moment? Or?
I think it's loading now.
You can go ahead.
It's a pretty large file, so it might take a few minutes to load.
Okay. Yeah, because actually, that was like maybe the third slide, so I think it was a little bit out of alignment too. I want you to see the slide. I'm going to talk about it, but it's important to see it. And I didn't bring my glasses, and this is teeny tiny, so I'm going to do the best that I can here, guys. One of the other big issues in our community is a shortfall in slots. So does anybody kind of have a sense of what that might mean? Questions around that?
Shortfall in
Of slots, meaning childcare slots.
I'm sure it's really, really high.
It's significant. So right now we have over 1,800 slots in our community that are unfilled. So there are 1,800 children that need early preschool, and there are not slots for them in this community. In Charlottesville, the shortfall right now for children 0 to 2 is 572. So again, if there's any takeaway from today's presentation, it's that our youngest children are the ones that are most in need of childcare, and yet we do not have the actual centers to provide that care, or necessarily the dollars to provide that care. Let me see if I can bring
Is that, that's just, oh, okay, I see it's Albemarle and Charlottesville. How are those numbers found out, discovered?
Yeah, so we work with the Virginia Department of Education, and they do an assessment of what the available slots are in the community, and then we do the Census Bureau. So we looked at the most recent micro report for 2022 around birth statistics. So how many children are being born in each of the regions, or each of the city and the county, and all the counties actually in our region, to see how many potentially could be in childcare, and then what slot. Now, one could say not every child needs childcare, and that's true. Not every parent wants to put their child in childcare, but I think we can kind of assume that some of those children would want childcare if it were available. That's kind of how we look at it. It's not, the clicky thing's not working, so I'm not sure.
I think he's going to do it for you.
I'll just need to advance the slides for you.
Okay, let's go back if that's okay. We're going to go to the one that says 2024 example of impact. It's the one before that. There you go. There you go. Now you can see the numbers up there. So like I said, 1,800 shortfall of slots in our community. You can see what it looks like for the city of Charlottesville. We're doing well on 3 to 4s, which is really great, but we really need to work on children 0 to 2. Some other things to talk about broadly in our community, Head Start. I'm sure all of you have heard about Head Start and the fact that we had to relinquish our grant and the impact on our lowest income families. Those are families earning 125% or less of area median income. We had 205 children without childcare, Head Start childcare as of April 1. A lot of those children have since been placed, but not all. And so United Way was asked to step in as a leader in early education in our community to see what we might be able to do to help the situation. And we've been working with the board chair at MACA. One of the things that we did is provide $45,000 in bonuses to the teachers that were at MACA that decided to stay on with CDI, which is the operator of Head Start for the foreseeable future until the next organization puts in a grant and is awarded that grant. It's significant because we don't want to lose teachers right now that are trained in early education. We already have a significant shortfall of teachers. That's another problem. You might have heard Sunshine talk about PHA and some of the projects they have coming online, and they include child care centers, but we don't have teachers necessarily to work in those child care centers that have taken their CDA and they've gotten their basic credentialing. So this is like a two-part process that we're trying to tackle. So we provided the stipends of about $3,000 for those teachers to keep them in the profession and hopefully keep them with CDI so that they didn't leave and take other positions, because that's one of our biggest problems is that we have a huge attrition in people working in child care centers because they can find better paying jobs than other industries. So our goal is how do we keep them in, staying in that type of work. The other thing that came out of the Head Start relinquishment is that we were asked to put together a task force to consider what a community response to Head Start might look like. Dr. Gurley was in those conversations, Matt Hawes from the county, some of our nonprofit leaders at Ready Kids and SHIP, United Way, some local funders, and MACA, the board chair. And essentially, they asked Ready Regions, United Way to apply for the new Head Start opportunity. So we are in the process of going down that road and kind of assessing what we need to do. But one of the first steps is a community needs assessment. So we'll be working in conjunction with MACA, the Equity Center, and City of Promise, and Network to work to do a community needs assessment and look at what we need to do to actually put in that application for Head Start. So that would be run, if we're awarded that, by United Way moving forward in the future. Any questions about any of that before I move forward? Okay, so we talked about this slide, so we can move on to the next one. Another important program that United Way runs is called Coordinated Enrollment. So about 4 or 5 years ago, up until 4 or 5 years ago, I should say, if you wanted to put your child in early education, you would go to a local school and you would fill out a paper application and you would hope to get matched in a way that made sense for your family. We've since brought on an online system called Coordinated Enrollment, or single point of entry. So now there's a whole database of every single child care slot available in our community, and parents can go and apply online. It also provides a robust wraparound services opportunity. So if a parent comes in and they don't have transportation, we can pair them up with a school that's relatively close to their home or on a bus line and try to better serve their needs. Also figure out if they need part-time care, full-time care. And we also collect a lot of rich data from the system and understanding what our families need and what their kind of family demographics look like. And so we're in our 3rd year of this program. We've been doubling numbers. We had over 2,000 families served in Charlottesville and Albemarle just since FY21. So it's been a very successful program. And again, the whole idea is how do we improve the overall system of child care delivery in our region? And this has been one of the important ways that we've been able to do that. Next slide. Early Learner Scholarship, so this has been around for 40 years. This is the one council's probably most familiar with. It's the one that the city and the county fund. $192,400 is our annual contract. We just increased to $214,000 this year, FY25, which we're really grateful for that opportunity. And you can see we have 31 families being served right now, more than 80% of which are single parent households. This is just an important program. It's always been an important program for the United Way, and it's one that we hope to continue and also scale. So we have this year gone off after a lot of private philanthropy dollars to try to be awful more of these slots in the city because we know there's such a need. One of the other things I should just mention is that there's a lack of slots. So one of the other ways that we're trying to tackle that is actually get new centers off the ground that have teachers already trained. So one of those opportunities is Pilgrim Baptist Church, which is over in 10th and Page in a historically black neighborhood. We just did a $35,000 grant to that organization. It's minority owned and will be minority run, and it's an incredible opportunity to have a Montessori school opportunity right here in 10th and Page. And so that should be opening, we hope, by the fall or next spring. And there's others coming online. So one of the things we've grown into is providing business support, startup support, resource support, and getting these new child care centers. We're in conversation with City of Promise right now to do a similar opportunity. Abundant Life has approached us, St. Mark's Preschool. So there's a huge need for business training, licensing support, seed money and investment, and opening new centers around the community, as well as creating that pipeline of providers that are, not providers, but child care workers who are trained. I'm just going to pause. Any questions so far? Okay, next slide. Another area, I'm just going to kind of switch gears. So when we think about serving a whole family, it's really about making sure that the family's resourced in a way where they can meet their needs or at a minimum have a survival income in their household. And so about 5 years ago, we helped launch what we call the Financial Resiliency Task Force. You see all the logos, though, the logos there. Those are the other organizations that we work with. We've been meeting pretty regularly, just about every month, actually, for 4 years to come up with a work plan, an MOU that we all signed, and shared priorities to ensure that families who are looking for program services to get ahead financially could access those easily and efficiently. And so essentially we use Network to Works platform. Anybody looking for a job, looking to increase their pay, looking for childcare, looking for transportation, trying to figure out where they can get some affordable housing opportunities or financial coaching. This is the network that's been created to help those families. In fact, when we work with Misty with the city, she sends us folks and refers people in. We work with the county, but it's a really robust network. We've been up and running about a year in terms of taking families in. We're about 80 families that have been enrolled so far, which is really great. The average median income is about $31,000. We're working to try to get up to sort of an ALICE baseline, so asset limited, income constrained, so sort of a working poor population is the demographic that we're most trying to impact. And we've had some really great success stories just early on already, so it's been a really great program, and we continue to look at how to make it the most impactful it can be. And right now, the things that we really look at is workforce development, skill training, transportation, childcare, financial literacy, and of course, access to affordable housing. So those are the areas that we spend most of our time focused on. Habitat's been a core partner of Piedmont Housing Alliance, Network to Work, most of the ones you would assume have been a part of this for that amount of time. So next slide. Family Investment Program is one of our sort of robust offerings that we can support families with. Up until this point, most of our families have come from Habitat for Humanity, so they have their own Pathways program. If somebody's not eligible to purchase their home because they have low credit, they don't have enough in their savings, they don't have high enough income, we work with a family for 2 years. United Way invests about $10,000 per family. We help them with down payment assistance by doing a shared savings account, so we match money as they put money into their savings account. Reduce bad debt. A lot of our families come with really high interest rates on car loans, student loans, you name it, and that's really like the most difficult thing they deal with. It's really hard to get ahead if they're always paying off high interest loans. And so we work with them on reducing bad debt, increasing what we call good debt, and ultimately after 2 years most of them move into a Habitat home, which has been a really great and successful program. And so now we've started to expand it to Fountain Fund, IRC, and International Neighbors, who have families that may not be trying to purchase a home, but they have other financial goals in mind. And this is a program that helps the family meet their own needs as they design their own financial plan over a 2-year period. And United Way disperses funds to them as they meet their own goals. So it's been a really great, robust program. Next slide. Driving Lives Forward is a program we launched about 3 years ago. Again, we're just trying to tackle this from all different sides. Transportation is really important. We work with Carter Myers Automotive. The idea here is we source affordable vehicles for families and we get them really low interest loans. We partner with Virginia National Bank right now. We're looking to also partner with the CIC for low interest loans. And we've also started offering insurance assistance. Insurance right now, sometimes the payment each month is more than a car payment. We have very expensive insurance in our community. And also helping with down payment assistance. So the goal is to get somebody in a car that they can pay off within 4 to 5 years with a payment that's about $200 to $300 a month. And basically get them driving. For families that can't get into a vehicle, we're adding a vehicle repair program this year. Ridgewood Network to Work spent about $75,000 this year on vehicle repair requests. It's one of the biggest things we get and we hear about when people need emergency funding. It's utilities, it's rent, and it's vehicle repairs. So that's our goal. We're going to try to put together $100,000 in seed money. Ridge is going to do the same, and we're going to take on that program from Network to Work. Yeah.
Is the transportation part of this only focused on cars?
Right now, it's only cars. We haven't added bikes. We put a grant in with Lyft, so we're hoping to get a significant Lyft grant where we can give people codes to get to work or to provide childcare for their families, but we haven't added other means of transportation yet.
Okay, is there plans to do that?
I think it's a great idea. I think what we want to do is get vehicle repair off the ground and running. We want to make sure that we get more families in the pipeline for vehicles themselves. And then we have something called a loaner program. There's like another tier. We get donated vehicles and we put people in loaner vehicles who are actively in Network to Work's workforce development program. So we have sort of that continuum, but the final frontier would be like a bicycle or some other means of somebody getting around, especially
Right,
in the
like
city.
especially for stretching dollars, you know.
Absolutely.
An Urban Arrow family vehicle that's a bike
Absolutely.
costs $5,000.
We're open to everything.
Yeah.
I think what we see is a lot of our families have to drive in from far because they cannot afford to live in the city. And
Yeah.
so bike isn't really going to help them all that much in that scenario. So like if you're a city resident, yes, but most of our families are commuting in from like Louisa, Waynesboro, wherever they can afford to live, which typically is unfortunately not Charlottesville. But that isn't a bad idea to have even, my whole thing is provide a continuum of options for people because every family's different, right?
Yeah.
But the goal this year is to get that vehicle repair program up and running. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. And again, you can kind of see typical clients, the same clients, single mom, hourly wage, working poor, all of the things that we're trying to really support and lift up. Next slide.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just finish up one of our very new programs. I keep saying newer programs. As you can see, we have many new programs at United Way, but I'll finish with this one. Small business grant making. So we've been working with the CIC. They're one of our partners in our financial resiliency task force. They do loans. They did do some grant making during the pandemic, but that's not really what they focus on. Mostly they focus on sort of micro loans, and then of course their coursework and entrepreneurism. And where they could use some support and conversation is grants to small businesses that are trying to scale. And so we started, I think 3 or 4 years ago, working with the Minority Business Alliance, which is an affinity group at the local chamber. And we offer $5,000 grants. We do $50,000 worth of grants. They're sustaining grants, so they're to help people with immediate needs. Like the first year we helped Voo Noodles move from the Jefferson School over to Water Street, and we bought all the equipment to get her kitchen open, as an example, like super specific, highly tangible things. This past year, Khadijah's Kitchen, she's from Afghanistan. She's a single mom of 5 children. You may have heard in the news somebody stole actually her food truck, which is her only means of support. And so she got a grant of $5,000, was able to buy another food truck. Most of the things I'm doing at United Way are highly specific, highly tangible, immediate results for families to try to help them do better. Like that's the goal that we have in mind. That's been a very successful program. Then 2 years ago, I approached the City Economic Development Department and the County Economic Development Department and asked if they would be interested in considering an expanded grant program, and they were, so that's been really great. So we've had one whole cycle of grant making, and now we're on to our second year. I think we had over 36 applications this last round. And I'll just share, the last recipients were Culinary Concepts. That's Alan there and his family. Alan Scottish Shortbread, Swift Transportation, and Spirit Lab Distillery. So they were all funded with a $10,000 grant. And we asked Alan, you know, how did it go? Like, you got this $10,000 grant to help with capacity. And he said, I was actually able to take 30 days and get out of the kitchen and think about how to grow my company. I was able to hire somebody new. And I took that time and I went out and I got a bunch of new accounts, including Whole Foods. And it just did this for me. So great, it's only $10,000, but if $10,000 gives you a little breathing space to think about how to expand your company, that's what we're all about, accelerating that. And we really see it as an alternative means to traditional employment. A lot of the folks in entrepreneurial roles maybe can't do traditional employment or want to be able to build wealth, which they can do through being an entrepreneur. So it's been a really successful program, and we're really happy that we're able to work with the Charlottesville Office of Economic Development on it. Chris has been a big supporter. So that's really it. I think that was my last slide. Just thank you for your support and investment in our work. We really appreciate it. And what's really helpful to me is when you will sit down and have coffee with me, which I've done with most of you, but not you, Michael Payne, and I don't think you, Ms. Ostrin, would love to sit down with you, because the more I can hear from you about your perspective about what city residents are telling you, it helps me inform how we do program design. We're big on talking to the clients that we serve. We have family councils that are part of our program design, so we really want to hear both from our elected officials and we want to hear from the families that we're helping. Like, how do we best deliver these programs in a way that meets you where you're at? Like, that's always our goal at United Way. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Listen, thank you so much. We really appreciate the work
Yeah.
that you do. It was a great presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have a report from the Local Energy Alliance Program, LEAP, and it's Katie Van Langen and Wilson Ratliff.
Hi.
Yeah, welcome.
Is Wilson on the video? Do you see him?
I believe I am.
Oh, there we go.
There I am, yeah.
Great.
Hello,
And
everybody.
do you guys also have our presentation? There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Yes,
Okay.
it's in the packet.
Is there, should we try and do the, what, should I move over there or?
Whichever you feel comfortable, you can grab it and come back.
Do you, oh,
sorry.
there it is.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'll stay here. Great. Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here today. We're really excited to talk to you about LEAP. I am Katie Van Langen. I am one of the co-executive directors of LEAP, and I am joined by Wilson Ratliff, who is my fellow co-director, who is joining us virtually today. So what is LEAP? We are based in Charlottesville. We are founded in 2009, and we were born out of the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County coming together and realizing that there was a need for an organization and a climate action plan before both organizations had created their climate action plans, to create a mutual vision around lowering greenhouse gas emissions. And it was started as a community project that received some additional funding, and LEAP was born. Our vision as an organization is to create a more energy efficient and resilient community, reducing the carbon footprint while also improving quality of life for all of the residents. We're really proud to have been city partners from the very beginning, and the city is really intertwined in all aspects of our success as an organization. Over the past 15 years, we've helped over 13,000 residents across the state in their journeys towards sustainability and energy efficiency. And the bulk of the work that we do is around energy efficiency, home energy assessments, home energy retrofits and upgrades, and renewable energy, so largely solar installations. So I wanted to touch on a quick timeline, some of our key benchmarks in our evolution and how we've kind of evolved our business model over time. As I mentioned, we received our initial investment in founding by the city and the county in 2009. At that point in time, we were primarily founded by the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance, SEIA, and the Department of Energy's Better Buildings Neighborhood Program. We officially started doing work as a 501c3 nonprofit in 2010. We moved into 608 Ridge Street, which some of you may know as the Eco Remod House, which is actually a city-owned building. This was a home in a historic neighborhood that was it was slightly neglected, but through an innovative partnership between UVA, the City of Charlottesville, and LEAP, the house went from a formerly neglected home to an innovative energy demonstration house, as well as LEAP's offices. So for quite some time, we were able to have individuals from the community stop by, see the offices, understand energy efficiency and how that was done within our space, and see how that they could make their homes more energy efficient. So for the first 5 years of LEAP's operation, we were primarily funded from stimulus funding. And so during that time, we were largely focused on home energy assessments and doing work mostly for market rate populations. And as that stimulus funding started to run down, it also meant we had to take a closer look at how we were operating, and our business and our priorities started to evolve quite a bit. So up until that point, up until about 2014, we were again primarily focused on working in the home. We realized there was an opportunity when working with market rate customers to also think about solar. There was a lot of interest around it at that time. So that was when we first launched our first Solarize Virginia program. And Solarize in general, it's a national model. It was started in Oregon in the early 2000s. And the idea around it is to help individual homeowners overcome the barriers to going solar. So we adopted that model and created really customized local content in partnership with the City of Charlottesville. And our goals around that are to help connect homeowners with discounted pricing, vetted installers, and do it during a limited time window. So doing it in that way, we kind of help spur action around people who might be interested in going solar. So we launched this program in 2014. Since in the past decade, we've had over 930 city residents sign up for Solarize. Now, not every one of them went through with the solar installation, but every single one of them got a solar roof assessment to see their solar potential for solar, for getting a rooftop installation. Many of them attended webinars. They learned about the process. They got a proposal from an installer, and they really started to think about solar as an option, and we've continued conversations with all of these individuals over the years, and to date, we've had 195 Charlottesville homeowners install solar through our program, and I am one of them. And that's a total of 1.2 megawatts of solar in the city through Solarize. We, like I said, going solar is not something that we expect people to do at the drop of a hat. It's a big investment, but through our program, we realize it's an opportunity to help educate and cultivate people through the process, hold their hand, be a trusted partner, and we do that in partnership with the city as well. So one of our other kind of big turning points in our history was when we started working with Dominion's income qualified programs in 2015. Up until that point, we have been primarily focused on market rate audiences through our Solarize program and through the prior funding opportunities that we had. Working with Dominion as a utility, they really allowed us through this new funding stream to shift our focus to income qualified households and really change the impact that we were able to have on the Solarize community, or on the Charlottesville community, specifically low income and age qualifying households. This was truly our shift to being able to scale in reaching those more vulnerable households in Charlottesville. Similarly, in 2019, we launched an initiative with Charlottesville Gas to bring more weatherization improvements to a lot of the Charlottesville Gas customers as well. I'm going to pass it along to Wilson, who is going to talk a little bit more about our services.
Thank you, Katie. And counselors, I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but it's good to see you all. It's good to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about our process for weatherizing a home, since like Katie said, that's become sort of the core focus of a lot of our operations now. It begins with a home energy assessment, which has been the foundation for kind of the entry point to all of our programs since the very beginning, even when we were primarily market rate focused. It's still the case now. So that usually consists of about a 90-minute to a 2-hour evaluation by one of our building analysts. To get to that level of being a building analyst for us, there's about 2 or 3 weeks of cumulative training, as well as a couple certifications that go along with that, along with a state license. So anybody we're deploying into the field, we like to think is an expert in the field and uniquely qualified to make these sort of determinations that they are doing. So we'll spend a couple hours in the house. Within that, we'll also be doing a blower door test, which measures the air leakage of the house. It lets us quantify how leaky the house is, along with infrared scans to help locate insulation problems. And we'll work through a checklist, essentially. The goal of all of these audits is to really just create a comprehensive list of the energy savings opportunities within the house. And we try to do that independent of funding sources. And so even if our actual opportunity to deliver some of these improvements is kind of limited, we still have a comprehensive list of all the things that can be done in the house, and that can help inform future funding requests or handoffs to other partners that I'll talk about in a little bit. Once we create that preliminary list, we'll verify eligibility of the homeowner, and that sort of puts them in individual buckets of programs and funding, and then we create a scope of work off of that, catered to the individual house, of course. Scheduling from there is pretty straightforward. We can usually serve people once we clear all those initial hurdles. We can usually get them on the calendar within a couple weeks is our goal. It's rarely longer than a month, so quick service is kind of part of our goal here. The improvements that we end up doing in most homes will consist of insulation improvements, largely attic and crawl spaces. Sometimes we can do wall insulation depending on access. sealing air leaks, replacing light bulbs with LEDs. Water-saving shower heads and faucet aerators are an easy lift for us. Upgrading existing heating and cooling systems to more efficient options is also something that we try to do when funding allows it. Aside from all these energy efficiency issues that we can address, we also encounter a lot of deferred maintenance and health and safety issues, especially in our income qualified clients' homes. We can see plumbing issues, electrical issues, indoor air quality, things like mold, roof leaks aren't uncommon. All of those we try to address with existing funding sources by braiding them. Again, we have other nonprofit partners that we can also coordinate with to try to get some of this stuff done too. Following the retrofits, we also screen our income and age qualifying individuals for eligibility for Dominion's low-income solar program. And that'll provide a free up to 5 kilowatt solar array, so it's a relatively small system for income and age qualifying households. And our role there is to help facilitate the connection between the homeowner and the contractor to get the work done and schedule that, as well as submitting all of that to Dominion for reimbursement. And all the results of these strategies, our goal is always to reduce the energy load of these residents, make their house more comfortable and affordable. Any questions on any of that in our process there? Okay. Our efforts are focused on 3 key pillars, and I think I've basically touched on all these in the previous slide, and that is efficiency, electrification, and renewable energy, specifically solar in our market. Combining the efficiency work along with electrification and solar increases in energy resilience, reducing vulnerability to power outages and fuel price volatility, while also reducing our carbon footprint. It also helps low-income individuals reduce energy costs and improve living conditions. Together, these measures can significantly contribute to meeting local, national, and global climate goals.
I wanted to touch on some of the statistics and numbers around the stats, or what Wilson was just talking about, around our key pillars of energy and our focus areas, because we see the impact, but we also have been tracking, and we know that there's a lot of research around this data as well. So we know that our work not only makes homes healthier and more comfortable for residents, but the EPA has reported that homeowners can save an average of $200 to $400 annually on their energy bills by implementing the recommendations from a home energy assessment. And for most low-income households, we are doing this work for them, so they are not even paying for the work, and they're seeing significant returns from their home energy assessment as well. We've seen an additional $500 to $600 in annual savings that we have brought through our income qualified solar program. So huge savings on efficiency as well as utility bills. The electrification of heating, cooking, and transportation can save households an average of $600 annually by reducing fuel costs. There's obviously a lot of incentives around that coming through now. And a rooftop solar installation can reduce a typical household's carbon footprint by 3 to 4 tons of CO2 annually, which is the equivalent of planting 100 trees. So all of these things, they really do add up. And at the end of the day, we care about reducing the carbon footprint of all of these households, but for the individual homeowners, making their homes more comfortable, reducing their electric bills and other utility bills. I think those are the key things that we focus on when we're working with the participants in our program.
Since our founding in 2009, we've helped thousands of city households. I went through all of our records that I could find, and it gets murky in the early days, but between direct audits, retrofits and solar installations were above 2,000 households served. And then countless sort of general inquiries that we get on any given day, just with area homeowners and tenants asking about just broad energy efficiency questions about what they can do. Our active city-sponsored programs are listed here for you, and I'll just go down the list if you guys don't mind me reading this as a bulleted list. The first one, the climate protection team in our Office of Sustainability, we've had a program service agreement with them since 2013. It's been a collaboration with LEAP staff and city staff there since then in helping LEAP support the city's climate protection goals. Largely that is in the way of marketing and education support for the work that we're doing in the community. And ensuring that Charlottesville residents obviously have full access to the benefits of our programs and other local incentives. The second one, CJEEP, is our abbreviation for the Charlottesville Gas Energy Efficiency Program. That was, again, like Katie said, launched in 2019. That was designed to pick up where Dominion's programs sort of fall off when it comes to our income qualified homeowners. Dominion has pretty robust opportunities for anybody that's electrically heated, but they're understandably a little stingier when it comes to gas heat. And so CJEEP, for example, can supplement attic insulation, air sealing, as well as health and safety needs that just aren't included as kind of the fundamental part of Dominion's programs. Our most common usage of this is when it comes to stuff like attic insulation with Dominion's program. Their support for attic insulation stops at an R38, which is about 12 inches of insulation. But CJEEP allows us to insulate all the way to R49, which is about 16 inches. So it's almost 20% improvement on the insulation over what the homeowner would get otherwise. Bullet 3, the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant. The way we're using this funding is to make homes solar ready. And that's kind of to clear the biggest barrier that we're seeing with adoption into Dominion's low-income solar program is roof condition. Dominion requires within their program that a roof must be with newer than 10 years to be able to be eligible for the program. And obviously in disadvantaged communities, the cost of roof replacement is significant. We're seeing probably at least 50% deferral rates when it comes to solar because of the roof condition. And so with those CG funds, we're able to do both repairs and full replacements on some of these roofs to clear the way for Dominion's low-income program. We also have home funding, and we have had it, I think we're on our third or fourth year now. We're using this current round of funding just for larger retrofits that our existing utility programs don't cover. The biggest thing that we've run into is, like I said, deferred maintenance, so that can cover windows and doors. We're using it on one house comes to mind that have significant foundation water issues, standing water in their basement, as well as mold associated with that. So that home funding allows us to solve the water problem as well as remediate the mold, so that then we can use our existing programs to properly air seal and insulate the house. Over 2,000 households have received energy assessments since 2009. From that, by our latest count, about 800 have received the weatherization and efficiency retrofit work completed by either LEAP or in the earlier days by one of our subcontractors. That also includes 235 total solar installations. 41 of those would be the Dominion Low Income Solar Program. Over the last 18 months, that would be.
So Wilson just chatted about a lot of the work that we do, and over the past 15 years, we know that we have really had a significant impact on our local community. We hear feedback like Ida, who we are really making their home more comfortable. It's cooler, it's hotter, it's, you know, that's our goal, is I think for them to truly feel the impact that we make on their homes when we're done with the home energy retrofits. So we see the impact. There's anecdotal results around that. We've tracked a lot of numbers around that. But one of the things that we have recognized over the past couple years is that we can do better. There is a lot around the tracking tools and energy modeling that is frankly a little bit new, and just counting a home energy assessment as a success is a success. But we want to know what came out of that. What were the energy savings? How did that impact their bills? How does it affect the city's climate action plan? And so we have truly invested internally on our databases, our tracking tools, our energy modeling. A lot of those things are in place right now, and we're really hoping and eager to see more numbers coming through, and will be in our reporting moving forward. We've already shared a lot of them with our team that we work with at the city, and I think they'll be incorporated into future reports. So we recognize that there's also a big opportunity there too, because as Wilson mentioned, we've already served quite a lot of city residents in getting home energy assessments and upgrades, but there's a lot more opportunity there. So not only looking at the impact that we've had on the residents that we have served, but how do we reach the other remaining city residents that could also use our help? So that's what comes next on that side of things.
We have an annual budget of a little over $4.6 million right now. 85% of which is program related, and as we've talked about, we leverage multiple funding streams, ideally all at once on any given job, and that includes utility rebates and referral fees to some of our subcontractors to support the program administration. For every dollar invested in LEAP, we can leverage usually 3 to 5 times that amount in additional funding through other sources, deploying it on the actual work that we're doing. Primary source of funding is our fee-for-service programming, and that includes Dominion's weatherization and low-income solar programs. But in addition to that, key sources of revenue include the City of Charlottesville and Emerald County, Charlottesville Gas, and the Solarize programs that we put on every year. Last year, we received a little over $100,000 in support from the PSA with the City Climate Protection Program, and then again on top of that was the CDBG and home funding. We pride ourselves on being a nimble organization who can respond to sort of an ever-changing landscape in this space as new funding sources come on and old funding sources kind of sunset. One way we're able to do that is with all of the community resources and connections that we have. Some of them that we work with often are listed here in front of you. AHIP, the Albemarle Housing Improvement Program, is a huge one. Then combined with the Building Goodness Foundation, we have a pretty streamlined client sharing process between all three of us, where between all of our various resources, we know if we can't address somebody's problems that AHIP, for example, probably can't, so we'll hand them over to them. And ditto, if they have a job that doesn't need perhaps the larger retrofit that they are typically doing, they'll send it over to us to just take the energy efficiency work, get that out of the way. Habitat for Humanity of Greater Charlottesville has been a significant partner over the years as well as Community Housing Partners, which is the federal weatherization provider in this area, and C3, the Community Climate Collaborative. Board and staff. So, benefit from the leadership of an incredible board of directors, two of which have strong associations with the city there. Crystal Rittervold, the city's director of sustainability, is on our board, and as is city councilor Michael Payne. Staff-wise, we're currently up to a staff of 20, which is up from just 4 in 2015. As we continue to grow, our ability to deliver services is reliant and continues to be reliant on our incredible field staff. That's made up of 5 building analysts right now and 7 retrofit technicians that are actually doing the work in the houses. They do most of the collaboration between the two of them in terms of creating the scope of work. To find things that are specific to each house's needs and all that. The core of which are, like we've mentioned, the weatherization, air sealing, and insulation work. Only at this point, HVAC is really the only thing we're subbing out, in addition to sometimes plumbing and electrical work. And then the solar as well. We have a trusted network of subcontractors that we can use.
So this past year, we've served approximately 750 households statewide, and we really expect that number to continue to grow. I think we're projected much higher than that in 2024 already. We've already hired 3 new home energy analysts, and we plan to hire about 2 more before the end of the year, increasing our capacity to about 1,000 households per year. And through our partnership with the Office of Sustainability and the Climate Protection Team, we hope to focus much of that increase in reach to the city of Charlottesville. So that's always our goal. We are headquartered here. Much of our work is here. We do serve more households throughout the state, but we try and prioritize as much as we can within the city first. And so the home energy analysts that Wilson talked about and that I just mentioned, that growth is really what drives our reach as an organization. So that the home energy audits must be done before any of the other work is done. So before we do electrification, before we do solar, the base is that everybody gets a home energy assessment. And so increasing the number of home energy analysts that can do that is the key to unlocking us expanding as an organization. And so we're really excited to be able to do more of that. The state of Virginia's IRA benefits are going to start opening up early in 2025. This is a truly game-changing amount of resources and benefits that are going to be coming to households throughout Virginia. We recognize the huge opportunity here. Our partners at the city also recognize it, and we are going to be working collaboratively to create an energy resource hub that will help residents throughout the city to take advantage of all of these benefits and to navigate what's available to them on a local, state, and national level. So LEAP and C3 are working together alongside the city to build this new tool. We will be building it throughout the fall. We actually kick off our planning process today. And the planning process will go through the fall, and we plan to spend the first half of next year, January through June, in actually deploying the resource hub as the new benefits start to roll out. So we're really excited about that. LEAP is also really primed to be involved in the implementation side of the IRA benefits as well. So we're really, I think there's a huge opportunity as they start to come through to figure out how we can really make sure every resident has access not only to the services that we're already providing, but continuing to bring in more resources as they come up. So I think that's pretty much our big picture summary of all of the work that we do. As I mentioned earlier, our mission really is to use energy efficiency solutions to make homes healthier, more affordable, safer for residents, while reducing the impact on our environment. And so we are so grateful as an organization to be in a place where our goals so closely align with those of the city. We are proud to support the Climate Action Plan. We feel like we've been a really integral part in reaching some of the goals that have already been set through that, and we're working closely with the city to make sure that every new PSA that we work together on is specifically addressing those goals moving forward. And we're looking forward to launching the Resource Hub and really making sure that our investments and our growth and the expansion really also help the city as we continue to grow together. So thank you all so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions?
Just briefly, you've mentioned all these great programs that go towards existing homeowners to do retrofitting or, improve the state of their house. What, if any, efforts do you have for new construction? Do you partner with developers or, individuals trying to add an ADU or anything like that? Is that part of your programming as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do, and I'll let Wilson talk a little bit more to that. It's something we're actually thinking about doing even more of in the next year. I think it's included in our PSA to talk more about, to provide more training for builders and contractors as they build new homes, but I'll let Wilson take that because he's more involved in that side of things.
Sure. Yeah, the new building codes that have gone into effect over the last couple of years require additional diagnostics, namely a duct leakage test and a blower door test in most cases. And so on a basic level, we're offering that to area builders. We're also trying to expand sort of our outreach, like Katie said, in that way, because many builders aren't used to sort of this higher bar, this higher building science informed approach to building. They're used to kind of doing the thing that they've always done for the last 20 years. And as these newer code requirements come online, I think there's much less room for error when tightening up a house and building a house from scratch. If you're not approaching energy efficiency from the very beginning, it gets much harder to meet some of these code requirements. So we're trying to do a lot of outreach in that way. We get probably half a dozen a month inquiries from homeowners who are in the process of planning or actively building additions or ADUs or homes for themselves that will work with them either on an actual consulting basis where we charge a fee, or if it's a basic question that we can answer over email, we'll just help them out that way. But we try to stay engaged in all aspect of it. In terms of actual incentives to be able to be deployed, like we are on the income qualified side, it's pretty light. Dominion, I think, is in the process of launching a new construction program, but I'm not quite sure what the status of that is right now. We're not participating in it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, listen, thank you so much. We really appreciate all the work that you all do. Thank you for the very informative presentation. All right, next up, Mr. Chambers is going to talk to us about the long-awaited, and we're all very happy it's here, a sidewalk priority list.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Council. So this is an update to an update. I came before you earlier this spring to give you an update on transportation issues in general. This is a very quick, specific update to that update, looking at our sidewalk priorities. Before I dive in, I do want to mention that at the beginning of this calendar year, Mr. Sanders said, we're going to get to the end of this fiscal year and we're going to have a new sidewalk list. And so as the first day of the new fiscal year, this is the sidewalk list. We're here. So how are we planning to build new sidewalks? So first, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the planning work that we've done to date, give you some anticipated costs that you can be looking forward to as part of your CIP development process, and give you a little bit of the workflow of the next steps that we're going to take this in. So this project started out back in 2022. We had identified a need to come up with a prioritization list because we had several different lists at the time. We had our bike ped master plan, we had the streets that work plan, we had several small area plans. They all said put sidewalks in very different places. So we brought in a consultant and we were supported by the state's Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment. That's what that OIP acronym right there is for in the second bullet. And they looked at some quantitative metrics for us. And I'll go through that in the next slide, what those metrics were. But they came up with, here is a list of your needs based on quantitative analysis. In 2023, we took that quantitative analysis and the list that they had produced through their data work and sort of started looking at qualitative issues with these sidewalks. We were doing that through last summer. We took a bit of a pause to see if the ADA transition plan could line up with this plan, and then we decided, let's go ahead and just finish this one. So you've seen this chart before. This was included in your previous transportation update this year and the one last year as well, because we were talking about this last year. On the left side of it is that quantitative analysis. It looks at the suitability of different sidewalk locations, demand at those locations, connectivity at those locations, and safety issues that have come up around those locations. The top 50 scoring project, or top 50% of scoring projects from that, we brought into a qualitative assessment that looked at how these projects were distributed in terms of equity. We looked at if they could match up with our paving schedule. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases they didn't, because the paving schedule was on streets that already had sidewalks. We looked at physical feasibility. There were some sidewalks in our old plans that just frankly are too difficult to construct because of the way that they are laid out on the street and would take a lot of work, and sometimes the juice isn't quite worth the squeeze. We also looked at what can we get done in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. What does the timeline look like in terms of feasibility? We also got some feedback internally and from stakeholders. With all of that assessment, we decided to split those priorities into different tiers, and I'll go through what those tiers mean in just a second. So all of the projects that we came out with are considered the city's priorities. There's not one that we're saying is more of a priority than the other, but we did tier these into different tiers because we understood that there were kind of different timelines that these projects would fall into just based on how difficult they were to construct. So tier one, we have about 16 projects that are considered tier one. This is sort of the lower hanging fruit. This is shorter segments where we thought should be fairly simple to construct, not as many right-of-way impacts, not as many stormwater or utility conflicts. There aren't necessarily trees growing in places where we might eventually want a sidewalk. So a lot fewer conflicts with tier one. Tier two is a larger group. These are projects where we looked at them and said, ooh, we don't feel totally comfortable saying that this is easy. We know that there's going to be some hard work here, but this is something that we can probably take on, at least in terms of design and preliminary engineering and figuring out how hard this is going to be to construct. Tier three are the hard challenges, the big stuff. We have 13 projects currently listed under tier three. These are mostly large projects. They have lots of conflicts that are very easy to point out. They often require coordination with an outside partner, either because that partner owns the property or because we know that we're going to need to come to an outside partner to get some funding, whether that's VDOT or a federal partner or a private partner. Some of these are properties that are on the boundary of UVA. Some of these are properties that, in front of the county office building, there's a piece of missing sidewalk that is one of our tier three projects. That's going to require some coordination and not something that we as city staff can sort of work through on our own. So we put out the draft priorities earlier this spring to collect comments on them for about a month. We received 213 unique comments. We had a few duplicates, but 213 of those were unique. The majority of them were received through our website, which had an online map. You could click on any of the projects and give feedback on that, or you could submit it through there was sort of just a web form underneath that to provide any other comments. I also received some through email. Also had a citizen look at every single one of these projects and submit an Excel spreadsheet with a comment for every single one, which was above and beyond. Most of the feedback that we received on these were considerations for the projects themselves of sort of, when you're designing these, keep an eye out for X, Y, or Z. We also got a lot of, we prefer this be a priority over this. That will sort of be up to City Council to decide as we go through capital planning later in the fall. But we are sticking with, these are all of our priorities, so that is really, there's not one that's a priority over the other. We're just trying to make sure that they are distributed both geographically and temporally in a fair way. So what has changed based on those comments that we received? 2 of the projects we removed. Most of the comments on those 2 projects said, I don't really get what you're doing here. Nobody really walks here, and no one's really going to walk here anytime soon. Or there's very low vehicle volumes, so people in this neighborhood don't feel that threatened by vehicle volumes in the same place where they're walking. We cleaned up descriptions for a couple of projects. These are all fairly old projects from 2015 and 2016, so some things have changed a little bit here and there. And we also added 5 projects that, for some reason or the other, maybe they had been considered for construction years ago and fell off of some list, but they weren't in our original analysis. And we got several comments on each of those 5 saying, hey, this is a kind of important connection for you to make. So we've added those in. So what are we talking about cost-wise? So including this current fiscal year where we already have some funds designated for sidewalks and are starting to move forward, we're talking about $4.76 million through 2030, through fiscal year 2030. And that only includes design and construction for Tier 1 projects and design for Tier 2 projects. And just to clarify why that is, we don't actually know what the construction costs are going to be for Tier 2 projects. That's partly why they're considered Tier 2 projects, is we need to sit down and do some design work to figure out exactly what are the construction costs, what are the issues that we're going to have to build around. We also don't have costs for design or construction for Tier 3 projects. Those are projects that are going to need a lot more planning, and most of the costs in sort of the early days are basically going to be staff time. It's going to be me sitting in meetings talking to people about how we move these things forward. So you see the $4.76 million price tag, that's where we're starting. But once we do more design, once we do more planning on Tier 2 and Tier 3 projects, that price tag will increase, as will our requests to federal and state sources. So it's not all on the backs of the local budget. But in terms of what does need to go into the local budget, we currently get about $100,000 a year for sidewalks in the CIP. Beyond that, this is what we would need. We currently have FY25 accounted for, so you're only seeing the next 5 years, FY26 through 2030, and we'll be looking for an additional $3.5 million on top of the $100,000 a year that's currently in there. When those dollars go into what years is totally negotiable, and I'll get to how we're going to update this sidewalk list in a couple slides, but this is really going to be part of the process of capital improvement program planning.
Could I ask one question here?
Sure.
Haven't we been stashing some money away in a sidewalk fund?
We do have a balance that is accumulated.
Okay.
We do have a balance that's accumulated. What's not included here is projects that we've already committed to.
Okay.
And a lot of the funding that's currently in there is committed to those projects. So some projects that you haven't seen on this list, but they're already in the hopper for being spent.
Okay.
So what do we do with these priorities next? So moving the priorities is kind of a team effort between Neighborhood Development Services and Public Works. Neighborhood Development Services is going to take the lead on the sort of the first phase of things. which looks at planning, project selection, sort of early conceptual design, so that you can put in grant applications, and we would work through that grant application phase. Once we have funding identified and have a conceptual design for our engineers to move forward, we'd hand it off to our public works team. They would handle the engineering, right-of-way acquisition, and construction phases to get the sidewalk on the ground. We're also going to be reviewing and updating schedules and budgets of sidewalk priorities on an annual basis. Our current estimates are based on sidewalks we've constructed recently. As we start to construct more sidewalks, we're going to get better data on those construction costs, and obviously they'll change over time. We'll want to keep the costs that we're looking at for the future up to date with those changes. We are also looking to do this as an annual update, so that you're aware going into CIP, what are the projects that have fallen off of this list? What are the projects that are being added onto this list because we've done some of the work with Tier 2 or Tier 3 and identified more funding that we'll need. This is not going to be a static list. It is going to evolve and be updated over time, but this is day one of that list. The next steps for city staff, well, you may notice if you go to our sidewalk priorities page today, it still says draft. So that's on my to-do list this week, is get that updated to final. We are also already starting to work on some of these. Before we finished the draft sidewalk list, we looked at these and saw there were some Tier 1 projects that we could probably get moving soon. We also had a couple of projects that were on our Safe Routes to School list, which was a separate list that we thought we could get those moving at the same time. But the ones that are on the sidewalk list that we started moving forward were 8th Street Northeast, that's right over here off of Market Street, Hazel Street off of East High, and Prospect Avenue. We're also going to be looking at scoping the first batch of Tier 2 projects for design work in the fall, and it's going to be kind of an ongoing effort to identify opportunities to complete planning work for Tier 3 projects with regional, state, and institutional partners. We've already started having some of these conversations on some of those projects. We obviously have a lot of work in public works to do so that we can free up some staff time to get some of these projects completed. We have a fairly large backlog of committed projects, especially with our VDOT portfolio. Luckily, we got one of those done pretty recently. And as we get some of those crossed off, then we can start doing more and more sidewalk work. In the meantime, we're also looking for opportunities to patch some places that are easy. You may have seen a couple of places where Public Works has gone out and put down some blacktop. That is going to be a very temporary solution. We are saying that is a quick build solution and are looking for more opportunities to put those out while we do the planning for the harder, more permanent concrete solutions. And that's all I got. I got through it pretty quickly.
Yeah, that was great.
Any questions?
Yes.
Sure.
Can you kind of I read your email about the Yorktown.
Sure.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so there was an email that came through
person?
earlier that was from a resident in the Greenbrier neighborhood, and they pointed out that one of our Tier 3 projects is on Yorktown Drive. Currently, it says on there it's going to go from Grove to Bunker Hill. There's already a sidewalk in that section of Yorktown Drive. It doesn't say do the section north of that, which doesn't have a sidewalk between Bunker Hill and Brandywine. And so this resident was very confused as to why we would put a sidewalk where there's already a sidewalk, and there's a couple reasons for that. The first is our bike ped master plan says that there should be a sidewalk on both sides of the road there. Not just from Grove to Bunker Hill, but all the way up to Brandywine, there should be sidewalks on both sides of the road. So really when we're doing the data analysis to figure out, do we put it on the side of the road opposite of where there's already a sidewalk, or up the road further on the left side or on the right side? We're really comparing all three of those segments, right? So the data analysis that we did came back and said that the segment that was across the street from the existing segment was very important. It scored very well. It had very higher vehicular volumes, more demand from pedestrians in that area. It seemed like a pretty prime spot, but it's also pretty difficult. It's a Tier 3 project. We understand that that's going to be a tricky one to get done. And as a Tier 3 project, we've said, hey, we're open to discussion. This is a project that needs to get planned. So if this is something the local residents feel like, hey, the next segment actually makes more sense, that's something that we can change with this list. As I said, list isn't set in stone, always going to be evolving, and part of what's going to evolve is the planning discussions that we have as we are developing the list throughout time.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of the positive improvements that happen when we listen to our constituents,
Absolutely.
as you're doing. Thank you. Any other questions?
I guess just two questions. One is, how extensive is that list of committed projects that there's the backlog for?
So if you look on the city's transportation projects website, there's a list that hasn't been updated since February that's a little outdated, but that should give you the scale of all the projects we're currently working on. There's a few that have come off of that list because we've completed them, but that generally captures everything that's on the committed list.
Where is that list?
It's on the transportation projects website on the city's website. I believe it's under the Public Works sub-website.
And
Oh, there's also the live update version that will be coming in July, but right now we just have a very simple Excel spreadsheet that's posted, but that should get.
Will you keep all these on the same webpage at some point, or would it be too distinct?
I think we still need to talk about how we're going to do that. I think for right now, we're just keeping the sidewalk priorities on its own separate page. Just as people get more comfortable with it, we might be able to change that to make it more of a direct flow into what Public Works' website looks like.
I see.
Yeah.
And then, I guess obviously the real question is funding. So the committed projects are already funded, and
That's right.
the city over like a 5-year period would need to be looking at like 4.6 million of new investment in order to move through tier 1 as well as the tier 2 design work.
Yeah, I think it's 3.5 over the existing 500,000 is what I said. So a total of about 4 over the next 5 years.
Okay. And do you think that aligns with what the project management capacity is, in terms of, if we were to invest that money, is there a theoretical level of additional sidewalks above that could be done, or are we kind of reaching our capacity?
So that's somewhat what we were trying to show with how that graph is built out. We tried to not make sure there were any spikes in it by keeping everything pretty spread thinly over that 5 years so that we would have the staff capacity in order to tackle those projects. It's a little lighter towards the front end because we want to take care of some of that existing committed project workload. And then the last year, it's actually a little bit lighter than usual, but that's because we're starting to run out of projects on our lists and we're starting to bring things off of the list. So I think we have it spread out in a way that our staff could be able to tackle, but that's also something that we're going to want to look at on that annual basis to make sure that we're staying on top of the estimated schedule that we've presented.
But the estimate is making some assumptions about that.
Yeah, it's baking in assumptions about workload as well as equitable distribution of those projects around the city so that we're not, building everything in one place all at one time and, both not giving that benefit to residents across the city and also concentrating that impact of construction in one place at one time is kind of not great. So we're trying to avoid both of those and balance workload internally.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Another question about funding. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the federal and state sources that we could source from?
Sure. So one federal source that we're looking at right now is the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. It is a $5 billion program that's part of the IRA. Our region is currently doing a regional safety assessment. Using some of that Safe Streets funding, we were awarded a grant for it about a year ago, and we're working on that plan now. You can, actually it's too late now to submit comments, but we were collecting survey comments on that. That plan is supposed to lead to recommendations of where we should be investing federal funds. We're hoping that some of that federal funding gets invested into our Tier 3 and Tier 2 projects. That's just one place that we would look. We're also going to look at state funding sources like some of our typical old state funding sources like revenue sharing, TAP grants, and smart scale. But the federal sources, it kind of depends on what's going to be available. And we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, great. And you did just say that the current schedule has a little bit of a lighter workload set for the the last year of this initial list.
Yeah, and that may be a bit of a mirage because we do know that as we start learning more and more about these projects, you're going to get the funding requests for Tier 2 projects and maybe funding requests for planning design work for Tier 3 projects mixed in there. So that last year is probably going to blossom a bit.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm anticipating is we'll have more projects that we even add to the list as we go. So
Yes,
that fifth year is tentatively light.
Yes, and probably not as late as it's appearing right now.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Excellent work.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben.
All right, I think we have, I know we have a closed meeting tonight. So is there a motion to go into closed meeting?
I can
That would be lovely.
read it.
Yeah.
I move that council enter closed session as permitted by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as follows. Under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 to discuss appointments to the City Retirement Commission, and 2, under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A7 to consult with legal counsel and receive briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to probable litigation regarding the Water Street parking garage where such consultation or briefing in open meetings would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, and 2.2-3711A8 to receive advice of legal counsel.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Okay, we are in closed session and we will be back at 6:30.
I still couldn't find what he was referring to in the